So I guess you came here today because you have some kind of drama going on in your life, either right now or maybe it's just a regular occurrence and you've decided that it's time to get rid of it. You don't want that stuff in your life anymore. You want to have positive, fun experiences with people. Now, the good news is there's actually a simple change that you can make which prevents this from happening so much. And it's not a big change, but it has a massive effect on all your relationships, your friendships, your work interactions. It's really profound. I don't know why not more people know about this, but I have an idea, and that's the people who practice this, a lot of them kind of just do it intuitively. It was the case for both my girlfriend and I. We don't really have a lot of drama going on in our lives, and we just didn't really know that we were doing anything different until people started pointing it out at us. So, what is it? What is this small change that you can make that results in less or even zero drama in your life? Well, let's start with looking at how drama occurs. So, I wrote out this little drawing for you. My writing is pretty bad, but I'm sure you'll be able to read it. Basically, in every interaction, this is a cycle that keeps going on. So a person takes an action. That action leads to an experience. That experience gets given meaning. And from that place, another action is taken. So how does this play out in the real world? Person A is the action taker, right? We can define action quite broadly. So an action could be an actual action, like they slept with your boyfriend. Or it could just be words, like, I'm sorry I slept with your boyfriend, but somebody had to do it because you didn't. Or it could be an inaction, like not taking the trash out. So that's what person A does, right? They take the action. Now, person B experiences that action, which in this example could be you. And then they give meaning to that experience by linking it in their subconscious with every other experience they've ever had in their life so far. And then, based on that meaning, they react, create a new action which the other person experiences, and it goes round and round. So, how does this lead to drama? Well, we're not very aware of this cycle going on. So, let's say that your roommate, we'll go with the last example, your roommate did not take out the trash. So, you come home and that's your experience that you're having. You come home, the trash is still there. You kind of had hoped it wouldn't be there. And you link that to all the times that you have told him that you want him to take out the trash because, I don't know, maybe you're never home on trash day. And on top of that, subconsciously, you may link that to feelings that you had as a kid where you felt like your parents didn't listen to you or didn't care for you, or maybe things that happened in other relationships and friendships. And basically, you just get pissed off at him for not taking out the trash. So the action is taken, you experience it, you give it meaning, and from there on, you take the next action. You go to him and you say, why didn't you take out the effing trash? You had one job to do. One job. Now, he experiences your action of saying that, and he gives that meaning. So he may think, relax, I just forgot. I'm a forgetful person. You cannot blame me for that. It's my forgetfulness. And also, you're not my boss. Like, you're not paying me, so don't complain to me when I didn't do your stupid tasks. And on top of that, it just keeps escalating. You each keep experiencing each other's actions and words, attributing meaning to them, which is personal for you, and that pisses you off even more. And from there on, it just keeps exploding into this messy drama. And this is a fairly simple example, right? It's not a big deal, the trash thing. It's like, okay, this kind of sucks, but next week we'll still take out the trash. Now, if this happens with things that mean even more to you, it gets worse and worse. Even when you're the kind of person that is generally respectful, you will get in situations where you just trigger on and off of each other, and the drama escalates from there, even when you don't intend to. So, what can you do to stop this? The main thing is to always be aware of where you are in this cycle. Are you currently experiencing, or are you taking action? Then the second thing is to take 100% responsibility for your role in that interaction. That means that if you're taking an action, you take responsibility for how that action is taken, which we'll get to in more depth later. And if you're having an experience, you take full ownership of that experience. Now, what does that mean, taking full ownership of an experience? I mean, isn't the other person kind of creating that experience for you? No, not really, because it's a different step. What they are doing, they're taking the action. You are the person experiencing it. So that means, and it may sound a bit radical, that whatever they are doing, that's not what hurts you. The action is just a thing that's happening. Words were said, things were done, but the hurt that you feel, that is your experience, and it is created by your mind, by your body, and perhaps even by the meaning that you attribute to it. Now, this is for most people a bit hard to believe, because there are many situations where you can kind of universally say that what they did was a shitty move and that's what created that experience. But in essence, it is still not true. The cycle is how it happens. Proof of that is a person can say something to you which feels very hurtful. And I'm sure you've known people in your life to whom the same thing was said and they just carried on with their life blissfully because they created a different experience for themselves. Now, it doesn't mean that if you feel angry or sad in reaction to something that somebody did or said, that that's wrong or that that's an invalid experience. It's perfectly okay to feel anger towards someone or to feel sad about something that they did. The point of this is just to be aware of that separation in your head, that the experience that you're having is not the action they took. The experience was your responsibility. The action was theirs. Why does it matter? Why are we getting so analytical about this? If you are blaming the other person for what you feel, you're doing two things which are really detrimental to your happiness and to your relationship with the other person. If you blame the other person, then you are dehumanizing them just a little bit. If you look at that person as an asshole or a bitch or whatever bad word you choose to label them for what they did, you are looking at them as just a little bit less than you. And that just gets rid of the empathy in the interaction because you're not seeing them as human as you. And the truth is that they are just another person also trying to be happy, also sometimes not really knowing how and making these dumb little mistakes like we all do. And now they have to deal with your reaction to it. You cannot empathize with them being in that situation if you label them as less than you. And if there is no capacity for empathy from your side, they will also not empathize with you. And the interaction is just not going to go to the place that you wanted. But more importantly, if you blame that other person, if you see them as an offender or a perpetrator. You are seeing yourself as a victim of their actions. If you blame them for what you feel, then you label yourself as completely powerless. You're now this person who walks around in the world, and at any point in time, other people can say stuff or do stuff to you that just throws you over. Like your day is ruined, you feel sad, you feel angry, and you cannot do anything about it because you're a victim of their actions. And there will always be people who do things that have the capacity to offend you. It will always be there, and you'll be powerless. But if you see yourself as being the person that creates that experience in reaction to them, it may not change how you feel in that moment, but it puts you in an empowered position. It puts you in a position where you know that if you continue working on yourself and if you continue being aware of how these cycles play out, one day you may feel differently about it. You may react differently about it. And in some cases, you may think, well, I need to feel angry about this because otherwise they're going to continue doing it. We're going to get to that later. The feeling that you have about it is not related necessarily to whether you consider it okay what they did or not. Somebody can do something and you don't feel bad about it, but you can still say, I don't want anybody to treat me that way. Now, obviously, making this little shift, it only takes care of how you think about what the other person is doing. I mean, if the other person, and they probably won't, is not out there thinking, how am I giving meaning to the experience of this action, then whatever you're gonna do in reaction, despite you taking responsibility for your experience, it's still gonna lead to drama. So when you are the one taking the action, when you are the one speaking the words, then your responsibility is to do that in a way that is conducive to creating an experience for the other person that minimizes the chances of drama. Now, doesn't that just contradict everything I just said? Didn't I just say that you were responsible for your experience, so they are as well for theirs? Yes, that's true. But there are the kinds of words and actions that just generally trigger more people. And you can make a few little changes that greatly reduce the risks of them flipping out over you just sharing your feelings. The first one is, whenever you're about to start your sentence with you change it to I. Now, what would that look like in practice, right? You're not going to say exactly the same sentence and replace you with I, but instead of saying you hurt me, you can say I feel hurt. Why does this matter so much? Aren't you saying the same thing? Not really. So while we may not all be walking around in our heads thinking about this cycle of action and experience and meaning, we do kind of know this intuitively. We just don't pay attention to it. So if someone else blames us for their feelings, we feel wrongfully accused because we are. We didn't create their feelings. We just took some actions. They reacted to it. And when you feel wrongfully accused, then you're not going to be empathic and listen. You're going to defend yourself. You're going to fight back because you don't feel that it's fair that you are put on in that position. On top of that, if you blame them, if you say, well, you did this to me, then you're not sharing your experience or its meaning. And if you don't share your experience, there's no way that this person can ever connect to you or can ever empathize with you because they don't know what you are going through. So if we go back to the example of the fictional roommate, right? Instead of going through your roommate and saying, you didn't take out the trash, you never listened to me, you could say, I noticed that the trash is still there and I feel sad because one of those little things that makes me feel appreciated. And when it doesn't happen, even after I have expressed many times that it matters to me, I just start to feel unloved, uncared for. Like my needs don't matter as much around here. So let's analyze this. The first thing is that you gave them way more information than if you would have just blamed. You shared with them your experience, which they may not have been aware of. Because if somebody is constantly telling you take out the trash, that is literally all that is being expressed, right? You know that this other person thinks you should take out the trash, but that's where it ends. You don't even know why, and maybe you just don't care. But if you know what experience that this other person is going through, you may realize, well, taking out the trash, it takes 1 minute and I can make this other person feel more loved and appreciated. I would like that. I would like to feel more loved and appreciated. So who knows, maybe I start a positive cycle around here. And if we look at that sentence a bit more deeply, we can get some other tips. So first one is actions were phrased as passive occurrences. So instead of saying you didn't take out the trash, what you say is I noticed the trash is still there. And it's very different because this is the experience that you are having. Instead of saying I've told you many times, you say I have expressed that this matters to me. This is very different, and it's also more honest because it starts with what you witness. Now in this example, yes, it's clearly true. I mean, if the trash is still there, that means they didn't take it out. But you will be surprised how many times you would think that somebody did something when all that happened was you had an experience and gave meaning to it. And because of that meaning, you invented an action. And this is also something that really can start drama out of nowhere. So another great example of using passive statements would be saying, this happened. Instead of when you did this, you say, when that happened. And it's again kind of the truth, because not always when somebody takes an action do they make a conscious decision to do so. And maybe they meant it differently as well. And they felt like, no, that happened. I forgot to take out the trash again. But if you start with blaming them, with saying when you didn't take out the trash, again, you're putting them in the accuser seat. Well, perhaps they really intended to. And to them, in their experience, it felt like it just happened that they didn't. Another important thing that you can change in this type of communication is to make sure that when you express your feelings, that you're actually expressing your feelings. So what do I mean by that? I feel angry or I feel sad, that's truly expressing a feeling. If you start your sentence with I feel like, then it would be best to take a step back and adjust it, because this opens the door to things like I feel like you don't care for me, which is basically blaming with I feel like in front of it. And it's a very easy way to protect ourselves from not really sharing our feelings, but putting them back in that blame role while tricking ourselves into thinking that we did things right. Now then, they still react as if they're being blamed, and you can create this meaning in your head where you say, I did my communication trick that I learned on YouTube, and they still cause drama, so they are the problem, right? So yeah, be mindful of that. Make sure that your feelings are actually feelings and not blame in disguise. Now, sometimes there will be situations where you do have to mention that they were the one who did something and you reacted to it. Even when sharing your reaction, it may just be necessary to explain that it only happens when they do this. What do you do in that case? Instead of using the word you ask yourself, what do they represent to you? So in a relationship, this could be when my partner does this, I feel like that. And perhaps even share your meaning, because in previous relationships this happened. Or when one of my friends does this, I feel that. This is not forcing yourself to communicate with gloves on and treat everybody carefully. It's actually the more honest truth. It's not about them doing it, it's about someone who represents that in your life doing that and what that means to you. If they were another partner behaving the same way, you would react the same way. So it's not about them, it's about whomever fits the role of your partner, fits the role of your friend, your boss, your coworker. So the honest way to express this is actually by not finger pointing, but by talking about that role. In the same way, you can also start separating your judgments and interpretations of their actions from their actions. So a great example of this would be, instead of telling your friend when you are being lazy, you would say, oh wait, they're not being lazy. I judge them as lazy. What they're doing is laying on the couch all day while there's stuff that has to happen. So that's the truth of it. When there are all these things that have to happen and I see you laying on the couch all day, then I feel this. So again, it's more honest. You are separating your experience from the actual action that they take. Another way in which it may be tough to take the you out of it is when you're stating boundaries, but it is possible. If somebody behaves in a way that you really don't like and you want to tell them to stop it, you can phrase it like this. Let's say someone at work is always yelling at you. You could say, I do not appreciate being yelled at. Now, think about this again, how much more honest this is. You're not saying that yelling is wrong, that what they're doing is wrong. You're just saying that as somebody who experiences this, you do not bring joy to the experience of being yelled at. It's not doing much good for you, and you want to let them know, you're not even talking about them, you're talking about the experience of being yelled at. You do not enjoy it. And if it happens again, then you can walk up to them and say, hey, remember that I shared this with you. I noticed it happened again and it's making me feel unappreciated. And then you can continue that with appropriate actions. But there's always a way where you can state and enforce these boundaries while making it clear that the boundary is about you. And another way to make them more open to this is to state your intention first and to say, look, I would like us to have a positive relationship. And for me to make that work, it's important that I communicate my boundaries and that I experience those boundaries as being respected. And I'd long to do the same for you. So let's just work with each other here, Wouldn't we both like to have a fun life, constantly having to be with each other? Who wouldn't? Always remember that this is your intention, that your intention is to create a positive relationship. And that brings me to the final change you can make, which is a lot harder. I don't practice it all the time myself, but it's worth sharing here because, again, it's something that makes a very big difference. When we are in these type of disagreements, what we tend to do is we want to get our point across. We want the other person to recognize our experience as valid. Now, the thing is that no matter what action they took that you think is so horrible, this other person is trying to do the same. They don't want to be the bad guy in this interaction. They also want to be understood. They're also looking for that. If you can have the mindfulness to take care of that first, to first recognize their experience, it will make them way more open to get to know yours and to connect with yours. So the way you would do that is, instead of immediately saying, hey, you did this, I feel that, you can ask them like, what are you going through? You can ask them questions that guide them to opening up about their experience and the meaning they give to you. You can ask things like, I noticed that you got upset with me. What was happening there for you? What did it remind you of? What was happening there for you? You know, I like us to get along, and I think the first step is to understand your side of this. Don't beat yourself up if you don't always end up doing this. You will get triggered in relationships and friendships probably for the rest of your life, and you won't always have the presence to say, oh, wait, let's first seek to understand this other person. Maybe not even the willingness. And even if you do, maybe the other person's not ready to share it. They don't want to open up in that moment of conflict. But we can all aspire to bring just 1% more of that into relationships. And even when you're seeking to understand, you're sending them an invitation to connect. And if they choose to reject it, that's fine. You can still continue expressing your own feelings, and maybe they end up opening up there as well. And that's the first place I think you can start, by just taking the first part of this video, taking responsibility for your own experience, taking responsibility for how you communicate, and you will see massive changes in your life. Again, even if you do just 1% of this, and maybe the next, say, 2%, your life will start to change, I promise. And if you know anybody else that would benefit from this talk, please send them this video and help spread just a little more empathy, just a little more understanding and respect in the world, and just a little less drama.